On this edition of the Table of Content, Michael and I will look at the New World Martyrology, an original story by Grettelyn Darkey, and we'll find out what we can learn from aliens. Stay tuned, that's coming up next, right here on the Table of Content. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Table of Content. I am Albert Saenz.
And I'm Michael Steele.
And we are glad to have you on board for another review episode where we will be looking into one of our recordings. And as you heard in the intro, we are looking at the New World Martyrology, an original story by Grettelyn Darkey. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that story and try to open it up for conversation and what might be hiding that we can learn. Now, if you heard, I said, what can we learn from aliens? Are there aliens in this story? Yes, there are. Is this some sci-fi epic with lasers and spaceships and world conquest? No, not exactly. There is some conquest going on. But I do want you to take a listen to the story. If you haven't heard it yet, pause the podcast and go to waobAudiotheater.org and look up under Door-to-Door Storytellers. Scroll down the list and find the New World Martyrology and give it a listen before you continue on with this podcast. But Michael, let's give a brief synopsis here, right? So we've got an alien invasion, but as the story sort of tells it, it's actually very peaceful. These aliens come in, everyone kind of sleeps while the invasion happens. There's no violence. There's no sky beams that blow up world monuments. It's all very kind of peaceful. And then we're presented with down the road, the future after the colonization. But the world has changed because of, what the colonists, the aliens, have sort of implemented into the world. Is that a fair synopsis?
Yes, sounded great. And I really like that aspect of the story. I'd never really thought about an alien invasion being peaceful. I love that line at the opening. It says, because let's be honest, if an alien race is smart enough to make it to our planet undetected, they certainly would have a plan for what to do with us when they got here.
Right. It's like, well, I guess we just go and blow up the world. I guess that's why we traveled across the galaxy, just to go and destroy it.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely a different take from what Hollywood portrays aliens normally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one of these concepts is that the colonists, the aliens, have, from what we gather in the story, have eliminated organized religion. Specifically, we gather that Christianity has sort of been completely outlawed, banned. It's actually some sort of criminal offense to participate in Christianity.
Right.
But what can you expand a little bit for the listeners without giving away, I guess, a whole lot? What exactly is the twist to our protagonist here?
Well, it's interesting. The twist is you have the classic story, like really the people who are being invaded are usually portrayed as the underdogs, the victims, the righteous ones who suffer, right? And they're really the ones that our empathy leans towards. And the beauty of the story is that it's written from the perspective of this human person who is completely in love with one of the aliens, and she's like completely out of his league in all senses of the word, both species, but also talent and career and success and everything. He's head over heels in love with her. And so the story sort of unfolds in that narrative, and they haven't seen each other in a while, and he's made plans for their future together by getting a house, and then she has something to tell him, which is really intriguing. It sort of puts as you mentioned, the twist or the reversed on the classic sort of we're an oppressed race, but we're really the righteous ones.
So we have the character Cecily, who's the alien, one of the aliens, perhaps not one of the original colonists, but just one of the I guess you'd say one of the children from the colonists, because it feels
Mm,
like a lot of time has passed since the
mhm.
original colonization in the story. So Cecily is with German, and Cecily has a confession to make to German, and it's that she has basically found Christ.
Yes.
And German is completely sort of taken back and almost in a very sort of visceral way. He responds to Cecily almost like, "You're kidding!" Like
Right.
those maniacs,
The
the crazy
right.
people.
Yeah, the Jesus freaks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's one of probably the biggest twists, I think, is that it's one of the aliens themselves who ends up being converted.
Mm,
Uh, and of course they explain that it's sort of not in the public sphere because obviously it has to be kept very private, and she has some group of them that have gathered in some remote location, and she believes, she has
yeah.
come to believe she has found her faith, she has found God. And German is just completely just like,
Mhm.
no, please, like you
Right.
you
This
know
can't
what this means.
right. This can't be happening. Yeah. I have to report you.
Yeah, 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 that's a hard moment, isn't it? I mean, it just you can almost feel it like, "Oh, come on."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I wanted I really did. I wanted German to sort of at the last minute sort of run off with her, but I guess it lends itself to sort of a dramatic climax, like, you don't know what happens. German calls and reports her in as she's
Mm,
speeding away and, you
mhm,
know, but I guess, where I wanna carry this conversation is not really doing a lot of plot exposition, but is
mm,
in that point of the foreigner coming to find God and the local who should be the one to believe in
right.
God is not. And
Right.
just to kind of get that conversation going, my question to you is, that seems like a fairly modern concept, doesn't it?
Right. It does. And the line from the Bible comes to mind, a prophet is not accepted in his own hometown. And it sort of goes along that same line. Like you would think, well, Jesus Christ, first of all, if we're operating within the confines of the story, came to save humans, right? He came for humanity. And so, but at the same time, he's God, so he transcends sort of the human experience or the human nature. And so, if a super rational or highly intelligent alien species would come to Earth and were to be exposed to his message, yeah, some might, like you were saying, some might think of it as culturally subversive or empowering to the people that they're trying to dominate. And so, well, we just got to outlaw this thing because it's giving people an access to a deeper meaning to reality, right? And then at the same time, working within their species, there would be those who would be attracted by the message of Christ, the one of truth, of self sacrifice, of loving your neighbor. Whereas, I don't know, at the same time, within the confines of the story, if religion had been outlawed, I'm sure that, again, this highly intelligent alien species, and maybe I'm stretching the story a little bit, but probably had propaganda machines to culturally indoctrinate people to have this emotional distaste for Christianity, but not founded on real reasons. It's
Right.
just like, oh,
Well, I mean, what comes to mind, I mean, obviously, I really think this is still a modern day issue, but I mean,
mm,
I think of Poland and the communist occupation of Poland, and thinking of John Paul II. Before he was John Paul II, he was Karol Wojtyła, and his story of having to sort of encounter the communists that were invading Poland and trying to sort of stamp out religion in the
Right.
name of their system. And of
Yeah.
course, the Communist Party, as I understand it, they want to rule, they want to lead, they want to have organization, they want to have, political dominance. They're not necessarily trying to be evil. I know we've had our
Right.
share of bad communist dictators through history, but on the
Yeah.
whole, they're just trying to make sure they're the ones that are in charge. And
Yeah.
so, sort of organized religion, especially Christianity, is sort of not supported. It's sort of frowned upon.
Yeah.
And it feels that's always coming to mind when I was thinking about, modern day renditions of the story that we
Mm.
read in the New World Martyrology. Is you have the communists come in, they take over, they kind of get rid of religion, and they say, "Hey, well, we're kind of the religion,
Mhm.
and you follow us, and we'll take care of you. But if you try to go against us and you try to look to a higher power than us, it's not going to turn out well."
Right. And the ironic thing is that if you operate from that premise, it's not going to turn out well either way. It just because any creature doesn't have the wherewithal of itself to play creator, absolute creator, to put themselves in a God position. And I think that's really where all the problems start. Anyone who tries to sort of overreach, and isn't that the classic fallen human nature dynamic of we're always trying to overreach where we are, who we are. But as you were talking, I was also thinking of another moment when this was happening in history, that at the fall of the Roman Empire, when I was thinking of St. Augustine's Confessions, but also his City of God. And he wrote the City of God precisely because Christians were being blamed for the fall of the Roman Empire. Here we had this flourishing civilization that dominated Western civilization for, years and years and years, hundreds of years. And then all of a sudden it collapses. And it's because they were saying the Christians encouraged the Romans to turn away from the worship of their gods to worship this Christian God. And so he writes the City of God to basically say, no, it was inherent vices and corruption within the Roman Empire itself that led to its own destruction. It wasn't Christianity's fault. But anyways, I digress.
But you said it before, and you made it again in that example. But when something is tried, I don't want to make it into a physics lesson, but when you try to
Right.
compress something, right? You try really hard to compress something that is exerting pressure in reverse. At some point, it gets so tight, right? So, whatever the atoms are coming in on each other, and they're getting closer and closer and tighter, and then
Mm.
and you can't really push it any further, but the atoms are trying really really hard to get out, and then something happens, right? So let's say
Mm.
there's you're trying to squeeze a ball really, really tight, and eventually it cracks or it tears, or there's too much pressure from the inside, and it breaks, right? And the dam bursts, and then everything comes out. So we try to contain God, which is impossible, whether it's through the story of an alien colonization or a communist party or the Roman occupation, you know.
Mm.
eh, But at some point, the the dam bursts. I was
Yeah.
thinking about in Jurassic Park, the very first one, which is probably the best one. Okay, let's just admit it.
Yes.
Which is very probably
Oh,
the best one.
absolutely. Right.
And they're talking about or they're sitting around the table, and Jeff Goldblum's character, he says,
Yeah.
you were so busy trying to play God, you didn't think you didn't think whether you should. I butchered the line, but he's basically
Yes.
saying, like,
Right.
you were too busy trying to be all creative and make dinosaurs, and you never stopped to think whether you should be doing this or not. And of
Right.
course, what happens, right? So they said, uh, evolution will always find a way, or life always finds a way, because they had tried to keep all of the dinosaurs female, but something
Yeah.
happened and they found out now the dinosaurs can reproduce, and everything, of course, goes haywire, and Jurassic Park sort of fails until they
Hmm.
resurrected in Jurassic World, but that's a separate story. Um, but but
Which I just actually started watching it again last night, Jurassic World. So, anyways,
but the point is that they couldn't contain it, right? When you
yeah.
try to contain something, when you try to make it something it's not,
Mm.
it's going to break. Either as far as man is concerned, I think you try to contain man in one way, someone at some point is going to want to break free. So in
Yes.
our story, we have we gather now, because of what Cecily's saying, is there are others who were not content with having Christianity abolished.
Right.
And they say we're not going to stand for this, and we are going to rise up, and we're going to believe in the God that we believe in.
Mm.
And it just
Mm.
seems like, we're seeing those examples. We're seeing those examples from history and even today.
Right. I like what you're saying, that, taking that example from Jurassic Park, life will find a way, or, Christianity will find a way. Christ will find a way, and I used to, when I was younger, I used to get all distraught about the way the world was going. And especially, nowadays, if you're a Christian, you kind of, everyone's saying it's uncertain, and we're living in truly unprecedented times. But then the thought occurred to me, well, Jesus is still working in each person's heart. Like, he's still there as God. He's God. He created everyone, human beings, good, bad, everyone. And so that sort of, in one sense, is a hopeful thought, that, and in the context of the story, even in like this worst case scenario of a alien invasion, he's still working in the hearts of Cecily and this community that she finds. Like you were saying, the story hints at others who have found Christ. And thought came to mind, the Greek word for church, ekklesias, it means community. It's a group of people who believe in Jesus. So in sort of the ancient Greek sense of the word, but and then one of the beautiful things as well that the story brings out is that there, there is that Christ is a unifying figure, but he's also divisive. Some people will accept him, and other people just won't be able to, accept him. The German was probably in his own mind doing the right thing, but it kind of makes you wonder if, like, later on, is there hope for him, or if he's just following his, sort of social grooming.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said the word social grooming, because I feel like that is an excellent example for what we see on the smaller scale. You know, not not some large political regime trying to take over a country or persuade its
Mm.
people, but so I know society as a whole is big, but the way it's approached, I feel, is a more personal level. But so the social norms that we are surrounded by, in German's case, right? It's like, well, this is just what we do, right? This is we don't believe in this God thing. We don't believe in this mumbo jumbo Christianity.
Hmm.
There are a bunch of, hokey people in our society today, right? Society is on this sort of scale, this tipping point of like, God, Jesus, like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you burning your time? So
Hmm.
we're surrounded by this from the media, movies, TV shows, music, just the people we encounter in our daily lives, the people that we hear about on the news, and like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I don't know. I mean, no one else seems to be doing this God thing. Oh, I just want to do what's right. And if everyone's saying I shouldn't be doing God, and I guess I do my own thing, right? And so I just think that that social cue, right? A lot of people just respond to what's around them and what society's doing.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really kind of a dangerous place to be, because those who control the narrative actually control, the way society goes, you know. But I say dangerous in a certain sense of as a society in general. But that's the same. But at the same time, though, the key is also community and those believers who band together and they're faithful to Jesus. They go through times of persecution, but then, like you were saying, life will always find a way. The church and Christ will always find a way. It might not maybe enjoy the same type of temporal, social, political prestige as it had in years past, but hey, as Christians, we started out being outlaws from the beginning,
I like that. I like that. We're really just a bunch of outlaws.
Right. Exactly. We're just a bunch of outlaws. And I feel like historically, in the historical context here, we've enjoyed a period of blessing and peace and benevolence. The fact that, right, that society in general, governmental society, has recognized the value of religion and religious worship. And America, the great American experiment is that, well, all people should be able to practice religion according to the dictates of their conscience,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that works only so far, because every religion as a worldview subscribes to certain claims about the truth of reality. And so if those truths clash, or that worldview clashes against another worldview, there's going to be conflict. Like, there's a reason why I don't think as Americans we've adopted the Hindu practice of burying the wife alive when the husband passes away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm not sure what trajectory we're on.
mm,
I don't think we're let's start with the story. I don't
yeah,
think we're in danger of an alien colonization that will come and, take over peacefully and then slowly eradicate Christianity.
right,
I don't think we're in danger of that.
sure.
And, to the point where suddenly it's something that was hidden that has to sort of be resurrected. Like, I think in our modern day, I think Christianity is always going to have a foothold. It's going to have a place, and it will never sort of be
Mm,
completely abolished, no matter what extreme government changes may happen across the world. Like, Christianity is kind of here to stay. I think that there's obviously going to be some push. There's going to be
mm,
some friction. There's going to
mm,
be some, reasons to sort of stand up and sort of make a stand as Christians. I mean, we've seen that sort of in the past sort of 10 years, as things have changed on the political sphere, and we've had to sort of, assert ourselves as Christians and religious freedom. I mean, I don't think, people have been having to fight for religious freedom for, millennia, I'm sure.
mm,
But in our sort of own life experience, we've had this recent battle with religious freedom. But, I don't think it's going to be something that we're having to go to the mountains to have a private Christian worship service, and fear for
right,
our lives.
right.
But there's definitely this, I would say, genuine concern, that, hey, we've got to sort of hold on to our beliefs. We have to hold on to our Christianity. We have to hold on to our religion, so that it will always sort of be present, not just to us, but to the rest of the world and to future generations.
Hmm. Right. And that's the beauty of this story, is it highlights those types of questions, and it, by taking them and putting them in that sort of dramatic global situation of an alien invasion. And it's interesting how the author Grettelyn mentioned that at the beginning, like it was a peaceful alien invasion. Why? Because they completely eliminated any possibility for conflict, intellectual, physical,
Mm-hmm.
military. They
Mm-hmm.
just doped everyone.
Right.
And you
Right.
just woke up and, oh, hi, you're occupied. So that's, for me, that was one of the novel parts of the whole story. It was like, wow, who would have thought? Yeah, a peaceful alien invasion that just completely eliminates any possibility for a struggle or resistance in that sense. Yeah. So and that goes back to your point of saying, yeah, I don't think we're at that point either societal in society, but but because we have at least we have the possibility right now to take a stand, to be witnesses of Christ, to live our lives in a way that's worthy of Jesus. I think, of course, the most eloquent witnesses of Christianity are the martyrs themselves. And the title of this story, "The New World Martyrology," was captured my attention as well. I was like, right, New World witnesses, or the study of the witnesses of the New World.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what the alien Cecily does. She witnesses to Christ, even though German calls the authorities on her. And you were saying it's sort of a cliffhanger. You don't know what happens. Is Cecily caught? Does she end up, giving her life for Christ? It's sort of up in the air.
Another interesting thought that I just had about Cecily as you talk about her and her being one of the aliens, and this may have in no way been an intention of Grettelyn, who wrote the story, but it seems to a certain extent at times, like as we progress day to day, that the Christians that we sort of are sometimes treated like aliens, Uh,
Yes.
so we're like, what planet are you from? I'm from planet Jesus. You know, uh, and then everyone else are the normal people, right? So if you're not Christian, you're like, oh well, you're one of us. You're actually human, and it's just an interesting sort of thought on how Christians are sort of thought of, how Christians are portrayed sometimes. And it's, and I don't want to veer off on this one, but, Hollywood does a really good job of making Christians look like wackos sometimes.
Yes.
They have a really good job, like, whoa, and especially it's like the Catholic Church has some sort of like red target on itself. Like it's like
Right.
the way they portray priests and the extreme stuff that apparently priests deal with and all this other sort of just garbage. And I'm like,
Right.
you don't do this to other people, but like Christians, wow, we sort of get plastered against the wall and made out to look like just kind of freakish people. And that's not really the case, but gosh, if the world isn't sort of trying at times to sort of make us out to be aliens.
Right. And our Lord himself told us that this would happen. And it almost seems like it's part of the nature of the world and the nature of being a Christian, right? The spirit of the world is sort of concerned with the immediate, the temporal, the fleshly existence, but the Spirit of God is concerned with eternity and the hereafter. And so Christians, we're called to live in the world but not be a part of it. And so that clash and that dynamic it's going to continue until Jesus comes again at the end of time.
Right.
But yeah, but I've had that same thought over the years. Like, how is it that through media, through cinema, and these campaigns, that even the name of our blessed Lord Jesus Christ was turned into a swear word? And how did that come about? And who came up with that bright idea? Like, oh yeah, we're going to turn this into a swear word,
Right. Right.
instead of a blessing or a way to greet people, But yeah, that would be a whole another study in and of itself. Why is it that, right? It's the loony, all the negative aspects are kind of portrayed, and Christians are seen as just crazy or evil, but you don't really see any other religious persuasions being projected in the same light.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to my fellow alien, Michael Steele, and I think kind of what we take away from this story is that aside from the aliens, what we learn from here about Christianity, it's not too far-fetched, and that there is obviously a need um, and almost a call to stand up for Christianity and to make sure that in the midst of social opposition, such as sort of German,
Mm,
we still stand. We still stand for the great belief in our Lord Jesus Christ. Um,
amen.
and I would hope that more people sort of I would hope that we have some more Cecilys out there. So to any of the listeners that perhaps maybe aren't Christians,
Mm,
may you feel so inspired by the Spirit if you're called to take up Cecily's mantle. But I think even as Christians, we can still be Cecilys. We can still sort of stand up for Christ, whether we are already believing Christians or not yet believing Christians. I would just hope that there are more Cecilys throughout the world.
right. That's a beautiful thought. And as you were talking, just to think that, in the story, Cecily is part of the superior class. She's she's on the upper echelons of, of that particular society, and again, that just goes back to saying that Christ is working in each person's heart. So if you feel that Christ is working in your heart, let him in,
Right.
you know,
Open the door.
open the door.
Open wide the door.
Mhm.
Well, Michael, it's great to talk with you. Thanks again for joining us for this episode.
Oh, thank you, Albert. It's always a pleasure and always an inspiration to talk with you as well.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael and I have been talking and reviewing The New World Martyrology by Grettelyn Darkey. I invite you again to visit our website, waobAudiotheater.org, and that is theater with an R-E at the end, and look up under our door-to-door storytellers, look up The New World Martyrology and give it a listen, and may you be so inspired through this story to take up a stronger mantle for Christianity. And until the next time, when I hope you will join us again, be good, stay safe, peace.